Chapter 19 of Moods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 19. 6 months. The ensuing half-year seemed fuller of duties and events than any Sylvia had ever known. At first she found it very hard to live her life alone, for inward solitude oppressed her, and external trials were not wanting. Only to the few who had a right to know had the whole trouble been confided. They were discreet from family pride, if from no tenderer feeling, but the curious world outside of the small circle was full of shrewd surmises, of keen eyes for discovering domestic breaches, and shrill tongues for proclaiming them. Warwick escaped suspicion, being so little known, so seldom seen. But for the usual 9 days matrons and venerable maids wagged their caps, lifted their hands, and sighed as they sipped their dish of scandal and of tea. "Poor young man! I always said how it would be. She was so peculiar. My dear creature, haven't you heard that Mrs. Moore isn't happy with her husband, and that he has gone abroad quite broken hearted?" Sylvia felt this deeply, but received it as her just punishment, and bore herself so meekly that public opinion soon turned a somersault, and the murmur changed to "Poor young thing! What could she expect? My dear, I have it from the best authority that Mr. Moore has made her miserable for a year, and now left her broken hearted." After that, the gossips took up some newer tragedy, and left Mrs. Moore to mend her heart as best she could. A favor very gratefully received. As Hester Prynne seemed to see some trace of her own sin in every bosom, by the glare of the scarlet letter burning on her own, so Sylvia, living in the shadow of a household grief, found herself detecting various phases of her own experience in others. She had joined that sad sisterhood called disappointed women, a large class that many deem it to be, though there are few of us who have not seen members of it. Unhappy wives, mistaken or forsaken lovers, meek souls, who make life a long penance for the sins of others, gifted creatures kindled into fitful brilliancy by some inward fire that consumes but cannot warm. These are the women who fly to convents, write bitter books, sing songs full of heartbreak, act splendidly the passion they have lost or never won, who smile and try to live brave, uncomplaining lives, but whose tragic eyes betray them, whose voices, however sweet or gay, contain an undertone of hopelessness, whose faces sometimes startle one with an expression which haunts the observer long after it is gone. Undoubtedly Sylvia would have joined the melancholy chorus, and fallen to lamenting that ever she was born, had she not possessed a purpose that took her out of herself and proved her salvation. Faith's words took root and blossomed. Intent on making her life a blessing, not a reproach to her father, she lived for him entirely. He had taken her back to him, as if the burden of her unhappy past should be upon his shoulders. The expiation of her faults came from him alone. Sylvia understood this now, and nestled to him so gladly, so confidently. He seemed to have found again the daughter he had lost and be almost content to have her all his own. How many roofs cover families or friends who live years together, yet never truly know each other, who love, and long and try to meet, yet fail to do till some unexpected emotion or event performs the work. In the weeks that followed the departure of the friend, Sylvia discovered this and learned to know her father. No one was so much to her as he. No one so fully entered into her thoughts and feelings, for sympathy drew them tenderly together, and sorrow made them equals. As man and woman they talked, as father and daughter they loved, and the beautiful relation became their truest solace and support. Miss Yule both rejoiced at and rebelled against this, was generous, yet mortally jealous, made no complaint, but grieved in private, and one day amazed her sister by announcing that, being of no farther use at home, she had decided to be married. Both Mr. Yule and Sylvia had desired this event, but hardly dared to expect it in spite of sundry propitious signs and circumstances. A certain worthy widower had haunted the house of late, evidently on matrimonial thoughts intent. A solid gentleman, both physically and financially speaking, possessed of an ill-kept house, bad servants, and 9 neglected children. This prospect, however alarming to others, had great charms for Prue, nor was the Reverend Gamaliel Bliss repugnant to her, being a rubicund, bland personage, much given to fine linen, long dinners, and short sermons. His third spouse had been suddenly translated, and through the years of mourning had not yet expired. Things went so hardly with Gamaliel that he could no longer delay casting his pastoral eyes over the flock which had already given 3 lambs to its fold, in search of a fourth. None appeared whose meek graces were sufficiently attractive, or whose dowries were sufficiently large. Meantime the 9 olive branches grew wild, the servants revelled, the ministerial digestion suffered, the sacred shirts went buttonless, and their wearer was well nigh distraught. At this crisis he saw prudence, and fell into a way of seating himself before the well endowed spinster, with a large cambric pocket handkerchief upon his knee, a frequent tear meandering down his florid countenance, and volcanic sighs agitating his capacious waistcoat, as he poured his woes into her ear. Prue had been deeply touched by these moist appeals, and was not much surprised when the reverend gentleman went ponderously down upon his knee before her in the good old-fashioned style which frequent use had endeared to him, murmuring with an appropriate quotation and a subterranean sob, "Miss Yule, a good wife is a crown to her husband. Be such a one to me, unworthy as I am, and a mother to my bereaved babes, who suffer for a tender woman's care." She merely upset her sewing table with an appropriate start, but speedily recovered, and with a maidenly blush murmured in return, "Dear me, how very unexpected! Pray speak to papa. Oh, rise, I beg." "Call me Gamaliel, and I obey," gasped the stout lover, divided between rapture and doubts of his ability to perform the feat alone. "Gamaliel," sighed Prue, surrendering her hand. "My Prudence, blessed among women," responded the blissful Bliss; and, having saluted the fair member allowed it to help him rise, when, after a few decorous endearments, he departed to papa, and the bride-elect rushed up to Sylvia with the incoherent announcement: "My dearest child, I have accepted him. It was such a surprise, though so touchingly done. I was positively mortified. Maria had swept the room so ill, his knees were white with lint, and I'm a very happy woman, bless you, love." "Sit down and tell me all about it," cried her sister. "Don't try to sew, but cry if you like, and let me pet you, for indeed I am rejoiced." But Prue preferred to rock violently, and boggle down a seam as the best quietest for her fluttered nerves, while she told her romance, received congratulations, and settled a few objections made by Sylvia, who tried to play the prudent matron. "I'm afraid he is too old for you, my dear." "Just the age. A man should always be 10 years older than his wife. A woman of 35 is in the prime of life, and if she hasn't arrived at years of discretion then, she never will. Shall I wear pearl-colored silk and a white bonnet, or just a very handsome traveling dress?" "Whichever you like. But, Prue, isn't he rather stout? I won't say corpulent." "Sylvia, how can you? Because papa is a shadow, you call a fine, manly person like Mr. Bliss corpulent? I always said I would not marry an invalid. McGregor died of apoplexy last week, I heard, at a small dinner party, fell forward with his head upon the cheese, and expired without a groan. And where can you find a more robust and healthy man than Mr. Bliss? Not a gray hair, and gout his only complaint. So aristocratic. You know I've loads of fine old flannel, just the thing for him." Sylvia commanded her countenance with difficulty, and went on with her maternal inquiries. "He is a personable man, and an excellent one, I believe, yet I should rather dread the responsibility of 9 small children, if I were you." "They are my chief inducement to the match. Just think of the state those dears must be in, with only a young governess, and half a dozen giddy maids to see to them. I long to be among them, and named an early day, because measles and scarlatina are coming round again, and only Fanny and the twins, Gus and Gam, have had either. I know all their names and ages, dispositions and characters, and love them like a mother already. He perfectly adores them, and that is very charming in a learned man like Mr. Bliss. If that is your feeling it will all go well, I have no doubt. But, Prue, I don't wish to be unkind, dear. Do you quite like the idea of being the fourth Mrs. Bliss?" "Bless me, I never thought of that. Poor man, it only shows how much he must need consolation, and proves how good a husband he must have been. No, Sylvia, I don't care a particle. I never knew those estimable ladies, and the memory of them shall not keep me from making Gamaliel happy, if I can. What he goes through now is almost beyond belief. My child, just think. The coachman drinks, the cook has tea parties whenever she likes, and supports her brother's family out of her perquisites, as she calls her bare-faced thefts. The housemaid romps with the indoor man, and have endless followers. 3 old maids set their caps at him, and that hussy I must use a strong expression That hussy of a governess makes love to him before the children. It is my duty to marry him. I shall do it, and put an end to this fearful state of things." Sylvia asked but one more question. "Now, seriously, do you love him very much? Will he make you as happy as my dear old girl should be?" Prue dropped her work, and hiding her face on Sylvia's shoulder, answered with a plaintive sniff or two, and much real feeling. "Yes, my dear, I do. I tried to love him, and I did not fail. I shall be happy, for I shall be busy. I am not needed here any more, and so I am glad to go away into a home of my own, feeling sure that you can fill my place. And Maria knows my ways too well to let things go amiss. Now kiss me, and smooth my collar, for papa may call me down." The sisters embraced and cried a little, as women usually find it necessary to do at such interesting times, then fell to planning the wedding outfit, and deciding between the light silk and white bonnet, or the handsome travelling suit. Miss Yule made a great sacrifice to the proprieties by relinquishing her desire for a stately wedding, and much to Sylvia's surprise and relief, insisted that, as the family was then situated, it was best to have no stir or parade, but to be married quietly at church, and slip unostentatiously out of the old life into the new. Her will was law, and as the elderly bridegroom felt that there was no time to spare, and the measles continued to go about seeking whom they might devour, Prue did not keep him waiting long. 3 weeks is very little time, and nothing will be properly done, for one must have everything new when one is married, of course, and manicure makers are but mortal women, exorbitant in their charges this season, I assure you. So be patient, Gamaliel, and spend the time in teaching my little ones to love me before I come." "My dearest creature, I will." And well did the enamored gentleman perform his promise. Prue kept hers so punctually that she was married with the bastings in her wedding gown and 2 dozen pocket handkerchiefs still unhemmed, facts which disturbed her even during the ceremony. A quiet time throughout, and after a sober feast, a tearful farewell, Mrs. Gamaliel Bliss departed, leaving a great void behind, and carrying joy to the heart of her spouse, comfort to the souls of the excited 9, destruction to the high life below stairs, and order, peace, and plenty to the realm over which she was to know a long and prosperous reign. Hardly had the excitement of this event subsided when another occurred to keep Sylvia from melancholy and bring an added satisfaction to her lonely days. Across the sea there came to her a little book, bearing her name upon its title page, quaintly printed, and bound in some foreign style, plain and unassuming without, but very rich within, for there she found Warwick's essays, and between each of these one of the poems from Moore's diary. Far away there in Switzerland they had devised this pleasure for her, and done honor to the woman whom they both loved, by dedicating to her the first fruits of their lives. Alpen Rosen was its title, and none could have better suited it in Sylvia's eyes, for to her Warwick was the Alps, and Moore the roses. Each had helped the other. Warwick's rugged prose gathered grace from Moore's poetry, and more smoothly flowing lines acquired power from Warwick's prose. Each had given her his best, and very proud was Sylvia of the little book, over which she pored day after day, living on and in it, eagerly collecting all praises, resenting all censures, and thinking it the one perfect volume in the world. Others felt and acknowledged its worth as well, for though fashionable libraries were not besieged by inquiries for it, and no short-lived enthusiasm welcomed it, a place was found for it on many study tables, where real work was done. Innocent girls sang the songs and loved the poet, while thoughtful women, looking deeper, honored the man. Young men received the essays as brave protests against the evils of the times, and old men felt their faith in honor and honesty revive. The wise saw great promise in it, and the most critical could not deny its beauty and its power. Early in autumn arrived a fresh delight, and Jessie's little daughter became peacemaker as well as idol. Mark forgave his enemies, and swore eternal friendship with all mankind the first day of his baby's life, and when his sister brought it to him, he took both in his arms, making atonement for many hasty words and hard thoughts by the broken whisper, "I have two little Sylvias now." This wonderful being absorbed both households, from grandpa to the deposed sovereign Tilly, whom Sylvia called her own, and kept much with her, while Prue threatened to cause a rise in the price of stationery by the daily and copious letters full of warning and advice which she sent, feeling herself a mother in Israel among her tribe of 9, now safely carried through the Red Sea of scarlatina. Happy faces made perpetual sunshine round the little Sylvia, but none was she so dear a boon as to her young godmother. Jessie became a trifle jealous of old Sylvia, as she now called herself, for she almost lived in baby's nursery, hurrying over in time to assist at its morning ablutions, hovering about its crib when it slept, daily discovering beauties invisible even to its mother's eyes, and working early and late on dainty garments, rich in the embroidery which she now thanked Prue for teaching her against her will. The touch of the baby hands seemed to heal her sore heart. The sound of the baby voice, even when most unmusical, had a soothing effect upon her nerves. The tender cares its helplessness demanded absorbed her thoughts, and kept her happy in a new world whose delights she had never known till now. From this time a restful expression replaced the patient hopelessness her face had worn before, and in the lullabies she sang the listeners caught echoes of the cheerful voice they had never thought to hear again. Gay she was not, but serene. Quiet was all she asked, and shunning society seemed happiest to sit at home with baby and its gentle mother, with Mark, now painting as if inspired, or with her father, who relinquished business and devoted himself to her. A pleasant pause seemed to have come after troublous days, a tranquil hush in which she sat waiting for what time should bring her. But as she waited the woman seemed to bloom more beautifully than the girl had done. Light and color revisited her countenance, clearer and deeper than of old. Fine lines ennobled features faulty in themselves, and the indescribable refinement of a deep inward life made itself manifest in look, speech, and gesture, giving promise of a gracious womanhood. Mr. Yule augured well from this repose, and believed the dawning loveliness to be a herald of returning love. He was thinking hopeful thoughts one day as he sat writing to Moor, whose faithful correspondent he had become, when Sylvia came in with one of the few notes she had sent her husband while away. "Just in time. God bless me, child, what is it?" Well might he exclaim, for in his daughter's face he saw an expression which caused his hope to suddenly become a glad belief. Her lips smiled, though in her eyes there lay a shadow which he could not comprehend, and her answer did not enlighten him as she put her arm about his neck and laid her slip of paper in his hand. "Enclose my note, and send the letter then, father. We will talk." End of chapter 19. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 20 of Moods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 20. Come. In a small Italian town not far from Rome, a traveler stood listening to an account of a battle lately fought near by, in which the town had suffered much, yet been forever honored in the eyes of its inhabitants, by having been the headquarters of the hero of Italy. An inquiry of the travelers concerning a countryman of whom he was in search created a sensation at the little inn, and elicited the story of the battle, one incident of which was still the all-absorbing topic with the excited villagers. This was the incident which one of the group related with the dramatic effects of a language composed almost as much of gesture as of words, and an audience as picturesque as could well be conceived. While the fight was raging on the distant plain, a troop of marauding Croats dashed into the town, whose defenders, although outnumbered, contested every inch of ground, while slowly driven back toward the convent, the despoiling of which was the object of the attack. This convent was both hospital and refuge, for there were gathered women and children, the sick, the wounded, and the old. To secure the safety of these rather than of the sacred relics, the Italians were bent on holding the town till the reinforcement for which they had sent could come up. It was a question of time, and every moment brought nearer the destruction of the helpless garrison, trembling behind the convent walls. A brutal massacre was in store for them if no help came, and remembering this, the red-shirted Galbarians fought as if they well deserved their sobriquet of Scarlet Demons. Help did come, not from below, but from above. Suddenly a cannon thundered royally, and down the narrow street rushed a deathful defiance, carrying disorder and dismay to the assailants, joy and wonder to the nearly exhausted defenders. Wonder, for well they knew the gun had stood silent and unmanned since the retreat of the enemy 2 days before, and this unexpected answer to their prayers seemed heaven sent. Those below looked up as they fought, those above looked down as they feared,
and midway between all saw that a single man held the gun, a stalwart figure, bareheaded, stern-faced, sinewy armed, fitfully seen through clouds of smoke and flashes of fire, working with silent energy that seemed almost superhuman to the eyes of the superstitious souls, who believed they saw and heard the convent's patron saint proclaiming their salvation with a mighty voice. This belief inspired the Italians, caused a panic among the Croats, and saved the town. A few rounds turned the scale, and pursued became the pursuers, and when the reinforcement arrived there was little for it to do but join the rejoicing and salute the brave cannoneer, who proved to be no saint, but a stranger come to watch the battle and thus opportunely lend his aid. Enthusiastic were the demonstrations, vivas, blessings, tears, hand-kissing, and invocation of all the saints in the calendar, till it was discovered that the unknown gentleman had a bullet in his breast and was in need of instant help. Whereupon the women, clustering about him like bees, bore him away to the wounded ward, where the inmates rose up in their beds to welcome him, and the clamorous crowd were with difficulty persuaded to relinquish him to the priest, the surgeon, and the rest he needed. Nor was this all. The crowning glory of the event to the villagers was the coming of the chief at nightfall, and the scene about the stranger's bed. Here the narrator glowed with pride. The women in the group began to sob, and the men took off their caps, with black eyes glittering through their tears. Eccellenza! He who had fought for us like a tempest, an angel of doom, lay there beside my cousin Beppo, who was past help and is now in holy paradise. Speranza was washing the smoke and powder from him. The wound was easy. Death of my soul! May he who gave it die unconfessed! See you, I am there, I watch him, the friend of Eccellenza, the great still man who smiled, but said no word to us. Then comes the chief. Silenzo, till I finish. He comes. They have told him. He stays at the bed. He looks down. The fine eye shines. He takes the hand. He says low, I thank you. He lays his cloak, the gray cloak we know and love so well, over the wounded breast, and so goes on. We cry out, but what does the friend? Behold! He lifts himself. He lays the cloak upon my Beppo. He says in that so broken way of his, Comrade, the honor is for you who gave your life for him. I give but a single hour. Beppo saw, heard, comprehended, thanked him with a glance, and rose up to die, crying, Viva Italia! Viva Garibaldi! The cry was caught up by all the listeners in a whirlwind of enthusiastic loyalty, and the stranger joined in, thrilled with an equal love and honor for the patriot soldier, whose name upon Italian lips meant liberty. Where is he now, this friend of mine, so nearly lost, so happily found? A dozen hands pointed to the convent, a dozen brown faces lighted up, and a dozen eager voices poured out directions, messages, and benedictions in a breath. Ordering his carriage to follow presently, the traveler rapidly climbed the steep road, guided by signs he could not well mistake. The convent gate stood open, and he paused for no permission to enter, for looking through it, down the green vista of an orchard path, he saw his friend and sprang to meet him. Adam! Geoffrey! truant that you are, to desert me for 10 days, and only let me find you when you have no need of me." "I always need you, but am not always needed. I went away because the old restlessness came upon me in that dead city Rome. You were happy there, but I scented war, followed and found it by instinct, and have had enough of it. Look at my hands." He laughed as he showed him, still bruised and blackened with the hard usage they had received. Nothing else but a paler shade of color from loss of blood showed that he had passed through any suffering or danger. "Brave hands! I honor them for all their grime. Tell me about it, Adam. Show me the wound. Describe the scene. I want to hear it in calm English." But Warwick was slow to do so, being the hero of the tale, and very brief was the reply Moor got. "I came to watch, but found work ready for me. It is not clear to me even now what I did, nor how I did it. One of my berserker rages possessed me, I fancy. My nerves and muscles seemed made of steel and gutta percha. The smell of powder intoxicated, and the sense of powder was grand. The fire, the smoke, the din were all delicious, and I felt like a giant as I wielded that great weapon, dealing many deaths with a single pair of hands. The savage in you got the mastery just then. I've seen it, and have often wondered how you managed to control it so well. Now it has had a holiday and made a hero of you. The savage is better out than in, and any man may be a hero if he will. What have you been doing since I left you poring over pictures in a mouldy palace? You think to slip away from the subject, do you? And after facing death at a cannon's breech, expect me to be satisfied with an ordinary greeting? I won't have it. I insist upon asking as many questions as I like, hearing about the wound and seeing if it is doing well. Where is it?" Warwick showed it, a little purple spot above his heart. Moor's face grew anxious as he looked, but cleared again as he examined it, for the ball had gone upward and the wholesome flesh was already healing fast. "Too near, Adam, but thank God it was no nearer. A little lower, and I might have looked for you in vain. This heart of mine is a tough organ, bullet-proof, I dare say, though I wear no breastplate. But this—" Involuntarily Moor's eye asked the question his lips did not utter as he touched a worn and faded case hanging on the broad breast before him. Silently Warwick opened it, showing not Sylvia's face but that of an old woman, rudely drawn in sepia, the brown tints bringing out the marked features as no softer hue could have done, and giving to each line a depth of expression that made the serious countenance singularly lifelike and attractive. Now Moor saw where Warwick got both keen eyes and tender mouth, as well as all the gentler traits that softened his strong character, and felt that no other woman ever had or ever would hold so dear a place as the old mother whose likeness he had drawn and hung where other men wear images of mistress or of wife. With a glance as full of penitence as the other had been of disquiet, Moor laid back the little case, drew bandage and blouse over both wound and picture, and linked his arm in Warwick's as he asked, "Who shot you?" "How can I tell? I knew nothing of it till that flock of women fell to kissing these dirty hands of mine. Then I was conscious of a stinging pain in my shoulder, and a warm stream tickling down my side. I looked to see what was amiss, whereat the good soul set up a shriek, took possession of me, and for half an hour wept and wailed over me in a frenzy of emotion and goodwill that kept me merry in spite of the surgeon's probes and the priest's prayers. The appellations showered upon me would have startled even your ears, accustomed to soft words. Were you ever called core of my heart, sun of my soul, or cup of gold? Cannonaded suits your spirits excellently. I remembered your telling me that you had tried and liked it. But there is to be no more of it. I have other plans for you. Before I mention them, tell me of the interview with Garibaldi. That now is a thing to ask one about, a thing to talk of and take pride in all one's days. I was half asleep and thought myself dreaming till he spoke. A right noble face, Geoffrey, full of thought and power, the look of one born to command others because master of himself. A square strong frame, no decorations, no parade, dressed like his men, yet as much the chief as he wore a dozen orders on his scarlet shirt. Where is the cloak? I want to see and touch it. Surely you kept it as a relic? No, not I. Having seen the man, what do I care for the garment that covered him? I keep the handshake, the grazia grazia, for my share. Poor Beppo lies buried in the hero's cloak. I grudge it to him, every inch of it, for not having seen the man. I do desire the garment. But who but you would have done it? Warwick smiled, knowing that his friend was well pleased with him for all his murmuring. They walked in silence till Moor abruptly asked, "When can you travel, Adam?" "I was coming back to you to-morrow." "Are you sure it is safe?" "Quite sure. 10 days enough to waste upon a scratch like this." "Come now, I cannot wait till to-morrow." "Very good. Can you stop till I get my hat?" "You don't ask me why I am in such haste." Moor's tone caused Warwick to pause and look at him. Joy, impatience, anxiety contended with each other in his countenance, and as if unable to tell the cause himself, he put a little paper into the other's hands. Only 3 words were contained in it, but they caused Warwick's face to kindle with all the joy betrayed in that of his friend, none of the impatience nor anxiety. "What can I say to show you my content? The months have seemed very long to you, but now comes the reward, the blessed little letter. So like herself, the slender slip, the delicate handwriting, the 3 happy words, 'Geoffrey, come home.'" Moor did not speak, but still looked up anxiously, inquiringly, and Warwick answered with a glance he could not doubt. "Have no fears for me. I share the joy as heartily as I shared the sorrow. Neither can separate us any more." "Thank heaven for that! But, Adam, may I accept this good gift, and be sure I am not robbing you again? You never speak of the past. How is it with you now?" "Quite well and happy. The pain is gone. The peace remains. I would not have it otherwise. 6 months have cured the selfishness of love, and left the satisfaction which nothing can change or take away." But Sylvia, what of her, Adam? Henceforth, Sylvia and Ottila are only fair illustrations of the two extremes of love. I am glad to have known both. Each has helped me, and each will be remembered while I live. But having gained the experience I can relinquish the unconscious bestowers of it, if it is not best to keep them. Believe that I do this without regret, and freely enjoy the happiness that comes to you. I will, but not as I once should, for though I feel that you need neither sympathy nor pity, still I seem to take so much and leave you nothing. You leave me myself, better and humbler than before. In the fierce half hour I have lived not long ago, I think a great and needful change was wrought in me. All lives are full of such, coming when least looked for, working out the end through unexpected means. The restless, domineering devil that haunted me was cast out then, and during the quiet time that followed a new spirit entered in and took possession. What is it, Adam? I cannot tell, yet I welcome it. This peaceful mood may not last perhaps, but it brings me that rare moment. Pity that it is so rare, and but a moment, when we seem to see temptation at our feet, when we are conscious of a willingness to leave all in God's hand, ready for whatever He may send, feeling that whether it be suffering or joy, we shall see the giver in the gift, and when he calls can answer cheerfully, Lord, here I am. It was a rare moment, and in it Moor for the first time clearly saw the desire and design of his friend's life, saw it because it was accomplished, and for the instant Adam Warwick was what he aspired to be. A goodly man, whose stalwart body seemed a fit home for a strong soul, wise with the wisdom of a deep experience, genial with the virtues of an upright life, devout with that humble yet valiant piety which comes through hard-won victories over the world, the flesh, and the devil. Despite the hope that warmed his heart, Moor felt poor beside him, as a new reverence warmed the old affection. His face showed it though he did not speak, and Warwick laid an arm about his shoulders, as he had often done of late when they were alone, drawing him gently on again, as he said, with a touch of playfulness to set both at ease. Tell me your plans, my cup of gold, and let me lend a hand toward filling your brimful of happiness. You are going home? At once. You also. Is it best? Yes, you came for me. I stay for you, and Sylvia waits for both. She says nothing of me in this short, sweet note of hers. And Warwick smoothed it carefully in his large hand, eyeing it as if he wished there were some little word for him. True, but in the few letters she has written there always comes a message to you, though you never write a line. Nor would you go to her now had she sent for you alone. She knew that, and sends for me, sure that you will follow. Being a woman, she cannot quite forgive me for loving her too well to make her miserable. Dear soul, she will never know how much it cost me, but I know that my only safety lay in flight. Tell her so a long while hence. You shall do it yourself, for you are coming home with me. What to do there? All you ever did. Walk up and down the face of the earth. waxing in power and virtue, and coming often to us when we get fairly back into our former ways, for you are still the house friend. I was wondering, as I walked here, what my next summons would be, when lo, you came. Go on, I'll follow you. One could hardly have a better guide. You are sure you are able, Adam? Shall I uproot a tree, or fling you over the wall to convince you, you motherly body? I am nearly whole again, and a breath of sea air will complete the cure. Let me cover my head, say farewell to the good sisters, and I shall be glad to slip away without further demonstrations from the volcanoes below there. Laying one hand on the low wall, Warwick vaulted over with a backward glance at Moor, who followed to the gateway, there to wait till the adieux were over. Very brief they were, and presently Warwick reappeared, evidently touched yet ill pleased at something, for he both smiled and frowned as he paused on the threshold as if loath to go. A little white goat came skipping from the orchard, and seeing the stranger took refuge at Warwick's knee. The act of the creature seemed to suggest a thought to the man. Pulling off the gay handkerchief some grateful woman had knotted round his neck, he fastened it about the goat's, having secured something in one end, then rose as if content. "What are you doing?" called Moor, wondering at this arrangement. "Widening the narrow entrance into heaven set apart for rich men unless they leave their substance behind, as I am trying to do. The kind creatures cannot refuse it now. So trot away to your mistress, little Nana, and tell no tales as you go." As the goat went tapping up the steps, a stir within announced the dreaded demonstration. Warwick did not seem to hear it. He stood looking far across the trampled plain and ruined town toward the mountains shining white against the deep Italian sky, a rapt, far-reaching look as he saw beyond the purple wall, and seeing forgot the present in some vision of the future. "Come, Adam, I'm waiting." His eye came back, the lost look passed, and cheerily he answered, "I am ready." A fortnight later, in the dark hour before the dawn, with a murky sky above them, a hungry sea below them, the two stood together, the last to leave a sinking ship. "Room for one more! Choose quick!" shouted a hoarse voice from the boat tossing underneath, freighted to the water's edge with trembling lives. "Go, Geoffrey! Sylvia is waiting." "Not without you, Adam." "But you are exhausted. I can bear a rough hour better than yourself, and morning will bring help." "It may not. Go, I am the lesser loss." "What folly! I will force you to it. Steady there, he is coming." "Push off! I am not coming." In times like that, few pause for pity or persuasion. The instinct of self-preservation rules supreme, and each is for himself, except those in whom love of another is stronger than love of life. Even while the friends generously contended the boat was swept away, and they were left alone in the deserted ship, swiftly making its last voyage downward, spent with the day of intense excitement, and sick with hope deferred. Moor leaned on Warwick, feeling that it was adding bitterness to death to die in sight of shore. But Warwick never knew despair. Passive submission was not in his power while anything remained to do or dare, and even then he did not cease to hope. It was certain death to linger there. Other boats less heavily laden had put off before, and might drift across their track. Wreckers waiting on the shore might hear and help. At least it were better to dive bravely and not strife sail to a fear. About his waist still hung a fragment of the rope which had lowered more than one baby to his mother's arms. Before them the shattered taffrail rose and fell as the waves beat over it. Wrenching a spar away, he lashed more to it, explaining its purpose as he worked. There was only rope enough for one, and the darkness more believed that Warwick had taken equal precautions for himself. "Now, Geoffrey, your hand, and when the next wave ebbs let us follow it. If we are parted and you see her first, tell her I remembered, and give her this." In the black night, with only heaven to see them, the men kissed tenderly as women, then hand in hand sprang out into the sea. Drenched and blindly they struggled up after the first plunge, and struck out for the shore, guided by the thunder of the surf they had listened to for 12 long hours, as it broke against the beach, and brought no help on its receding billows. Soon Warwick was the only one who struggled, for Moore's strength was gone, and he clung half conscious to the spar, tossing from wave to wave, a piteous plaything for the sea. "I see a light! They must take you in! Hold fast! I'll save you for the little wife at home." Moor heard but 2 words, wife and home, strained his dim eyes to see the light, spent his last grain of strength to reach it, and in the act lost consciousness, whispering, "She will thank you," as his head fell against Warwick's breast and lay there, heavy and still. Lifting himself above the spar, Adam lent the full power of his voice to the shout he sent ringing through the storm. He did not call in vain. A friendly wind took the cry to human ears. A relenting wave swept them within the reach of human aid, and the boat's crew, pausing involuntarily, saw a hand clutch the suspended oar, a face flash up from the black water, and heard a breathless voice issue the command: "Take in this man! He saved you for your wives! Save him for his!" One resolute will can sway a panic-stricken multitude. It did so then. The boat was rocking in the long swell of the sea. A moment and the coming wave would sweep them far apart. A woman sobbed, and as if moved by one impulse, 4 sturdy arms clutched and drew Moor in. While loosening his friend, Warwick had forgotten himself, and the spur was gone. He knew it, but the rest believed that they left the strong man a chance of life, equal to their own, in that overladen boat. Yet in the memories of all who caught that last glimpse of him, there long remained the recollection of a dauntless face floating out into the night, a steady voice calling through the gale, "A good voyage, comrades!" as he turned away to enter port before them. Wide was the sea, and pitiless the storm, but neither could dismay the unconquerable spirit of the man who fought against the elements as bravely as if they were adversaries of mortal mold, and might be vanquished in the end. But it was not to be. Soon he felt it, accepted it, turned his face upward toward the sky, where one star shone, and where death whispered, "Come," answered as cheerily as to that other friend, "I am ready." Then with a parting thought for the man he had saved, the woman he had loved, the promise he had kept, a great and tender heart went down into the sea. Sometimes the sculptor, whose workshop is the world, fuses many metals and casts a noble statue, leaves it for humanity to criticize, and when time has mellowed both beauties and blemishes, removes it to that inner studio, there to be carved in enduring marble. Adam Warwick was such a one, with much alloy and many flaws. But beneath all defects the master's eye saw the grand lines that were to serve as models for the perfect man, and when the design had passed through all necessary processes, the mold of clay, the furnace fire, the test of time, he washed the dust away, and pronounced it ready for the marble. End of chapter 20. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 21 of Moods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Moods by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 21. Out of the Shadow. They had been together for an hour, the husband and the wife. The first excitement was now over, and Sylvia stood behind him, tearless and tranquil, while Moor, looking like a man out of whom the sea had drenched both strength and spirit, leaned his weary head against her, trying to accept the great loss, enjoying the great gain which had befallen him. Hitherto all their talk had been of Warwick, and, as Moor concluded the history of the months so tragically ended, for the first time he ventured to express wonder at the calmness with which his hearer received the sad story. "How quietly you listen to words which it wrings my heart to utter! Have you wept your tears dry, or do you still cling to hope?" "No, I feel that we shall never see him any more. But I have no desire to weep, for tears and lamentations do not belong to him. He died a beautiful, a noble death. The sea is a fitting grave for him, and it is pleasant to think of him asleep there, quiet at last." "I cannot feel so. I find it hard to think of him as dead. He was so full of life, so fit to live." "And therefore fit to die. Imagine him as I do, enjoying the larger life he longed for, and growing to be the strong, sweet soul whose foreshadowing we saw and loved so here." "Sylvia, I have told you of the beautiful change which befell him in those last days, and now I see the same in you. Are you, too, about to leave me when I have just recovered you?" "I shall stay with you all my life." "Then Adam was less to you than you believed, and I am more?" "Nothing is changed. Adam is all he ever was to me, and you are all you ever can be. But I Then why send for me? Why say you will stay with me all your life? Sylvia, for God's sake, let there be no more delusion or deceit." "Never again. I will tell you. I meant to do it at once, but it is so hard." She turned her face away, and for a moment neither stirred. Then drawing his head to its former resting place, she touched it very tenderly, seeing how many white threads shone through among the brown, and as her hand went to and fro with an inexpressibly soothing gesture, she said, in a tone whose quietude controlled his agitation like a spell: "Long ago, in my great trouble, Faith told me that for every human effort or affliction there were two friendly helpers, time and death. The first has taught me more gently than I deserved, has made me humble, and given me hope that through my errors I may draw virtue from repentance. But while I have been learning the lessons time can teach, the other helper has told me to be ready for its coming. Geoffrey, I sent for you because I knew you would love to see me again before we must say the long goodbye." "Oh, Sylvia, not that! Anything but that! I cannot bear it now." "Dear heart, be patient. Lean on me, and let me help you bear it, for it is inevitable." "It shall not be. There must be some help, some hope. God would not be so pitiless as to take both." "I shall not leave you yet. He does not take me. It is I who, by wasting life, have lost the right to live." "But is it so? I cannot make it true. You look so beautiful, so blooming, and the future seems so sure. Sylvia, show it to me, if it must be." She only turned her face to him, only held up her transparent hand, and let him read the heavy truth. He did so, for now he saw that the beauty and the bloom were transitory as the glow of the leaves that the frost makes fairest as they fall, and felt the full significance of the great change which had come. He clung to her with a desperate yet despairing hold, and she could only let the first passion of his grief have way, soothing and sustaining, while her heart bled and the draught was very bitter to her lips. "Hush, love, be quiet for a little, and when you can bear it better, I will tell you how it is with me." "Tell me now. Let me hear everything at once. When did you know? How are you sure? Why keep it from me all this time?" "I have only known for a little while, but I am very sure. And I kept it from you that you might come happily home, for knowledge of it would have lengthened every mile, and made the journey one long anxiety. I could not know that Adam would go first, and so make my task doubly hard." "Come to me, Sylvia. Let me keep you while I may. I will not be violent. I will listen patiently, and through everything remember you." He did remember her, so thoughtfully, so tenderly, that her little story flowed on uninterrupted by sigh or sob, and while he held his grief in check, the balm of submission comforted his sore heart. Sitting by him, sustaining and sustained, she told the history of the last 6 months, till just before the sending of the letter. She paused there a moment, then hurried on, gradually losing the consciousness of present emotion in the vivid memory of the past. "You have no faith in dreams. I have, and to a dream I owe my sudden awakening to the truth. Thank and respect it, for without its warning I might have remained in ignorance of my state until it was too late to find and bring you home." "God bless the dream, and keep the dreamer." This was a strange and solemn vision, one to remember and to love for its beautiful interpretation of the prophecy that used to awe and sadden me, but never can again. I dreamed that the last day of the world had come. I stood on a shadowy housetop in a shadowy city, and all around me, as far as eye could reach, thronged myriads of people, till the earth seemed white with human faces. All were mute and motionless, as if fixed in a trance of expectation, for none knew how the end would come. Utter silence filled the world, and across the sky a vast curtain of the blackest cloud was falling, blotting out face after face, and leaving the world a blank. In that universal gloom and stillness, far above me in the heavens, I saw the pale outlines of a word stretching from horizon to horizon. Letter after letter came out full and clear, till all across the sky, burning with a ruddy glory stronger than the sun, shone the great word Amen. As the last letter reached its bright perfection, a long waft of wind broke over me like a universal sigh of hope from human hearts, for far away on the horizon's edge all saw a line of light that widened as they looked, and through the rift between the dark earth and the darker sky rolled in a softly flowing sea. Wave after wave came on, so wide, so cool, so still. None trembled at their approach, none shrunk from their embrace, but all turned toward that ocean with a mighty rush. All faces glowed in its splendor, and million after million vanished with longing eyes fixed on the arc of light through which the ebbing sea would float them when its work was done. I felt no fear, only the deepest awe, for I seemed such an infinitesimal atom of the countless host that I forgot myself. Nearer and nearer came the flood, till its breath blew on my cheeks, and I, too, leaned to meet it, longing to be taken. A great wave rolled up before me, and through its soft glimmer I saw a beautiful, benignant face regarding me. Then I knew that each and all had seen the same, and losing fear in love were glad to go. The joyful yearning woke me as the wave seemed to break at my feet, and ebbing leave me still alive. "And that is all? Only a dream, a foreboding fancy, Sylvia?" "When I awoke my hair was damp on my forehead, my breath quite still, my heart so cold I felt as if death had indeed been near me and left its chill behind. So strong was the impression of the dream, so perfect was the similitude between the sensations I had experienced then and more than once awake, that I felt that something was seriously wrong with me." "You had been ill, then?" "Not consciously, not suffering any pain, but consumed with an inward fever that would not burn itself away. I used to have a touch of it in the evenings, you remember, but now it burned all day, making me look strong and rosy, yet leaving me so worn out at night that no sleep seemed to restore me. A few weak and weary hours, then the fire was rekindled and the false strength, color, spirits, returned to deceive myself and those about me for another day." "Did you tell no one of this, Sylvia?" "Not at first, because I fancied it a mental ill. I had thought so much, so deeply, it seemed but natural that I should be tired. I tried to rest myself by laying all my cares and sorrows in God's hand, and waited patiently to be shown the end. I see it now, but for a time I could only sit and wait. And while I did so my soul grew strong, but my ill-used body failed. The dream came, and in the stillness of that night I felt a strange assurance that I should see my mother soon." "Dear, what did you do?" "I determined to discover if I had deceived myself with a superstitious fancy, or learned a fateful fact in my own mysterious way. If it were false, no one would be made anxious by it. If true, possessing the first knowledge of it would enable me to comfort others. I went privately to town and consulted the famous physician who has grown gray in the study of disease." "Did you go alone, Sylvia?" "Yes, alone. I am braver than I used to be, and I have learned never to feel quite alone. I found a grave, stern looking man. I told him that I wished to know the entire truth, whatever it might be, and that he need not fear to tell me because I was prepared for it. He asked many questions, thought a little, and was very slow to speak. Then I saw how it would be, but urged him to set my mind at rest. His stern old face grew very pitiful, and he took my hand and answered gently, 'My child, go home and prepare to die.'" "Good God, how cruel! Sylvia, how did you bear it?" "At first the earth seemed to slip away from under me, and time to stand still. Then I was myself again, and could listen steadily to all he said. It was only this: I had been born with a strong nature in a feeble frame, had lived too fast, wasted health ignorantly, and was past help." "Could he do nothing for you?" "Nothing but to tell me how to husband my remaining strength, and make the end easy by the care that would have kept me longer had I known this sooner." "And no one saw your danger? No one warned you of it? And I was away!" "Father could not see it, for I looked well and tried to think I felt so. Mark and Jessie were absorbed in baby Sylvia, and Prue was gone. You might have seen and helped me, for you have the intuitions of a woman in many things. But I could not send for you then, because I could not give you what you asked. Was it wrong to call you when I did, and to try make the hard fact easier to bear by telling it myself?" "Heaven bless you for it, Sylvia. It was truly generous and kind. I never could have forgiven you had you denied me the happiness of seeing you again, and you have robbed the truth of half its bitter pain by telling it yourself." A restful expression came into her face, and a sigh of satisfaction proved how great was the relief of feeling that for once her heart had prompted her aright. Moor let her rest a little, then asked with a look more pathetic than his words, "What am I to you now? Where is my home to be?" "My friend forever, no more, no less. And your home is here with us, until I leave my father to your care. All this pain and separation were in vain if we have not learned that love can neither be forced nor feigned. While I endeavored to do so, God did not help me, and I went deeper and deeper into sorrow and wrong doing. When I dropped all self-delusion and desperate striving, and stood still, asking to be shown the right, he then put out his hand, and through much tribulation led me to convictions that I dare not disobey. Our friendship may be a happy one if we accept and use it as we should. Let it be so, and for the little while that I remain, let us live honestly before heaven and take no thought for the world's opinion." Adam might have owned the glance she bent upon her husband, so clear, so steadfast was it, but the earnestness was all her own, and blended with it a new strength that seemed a late compensation for lost love and waning life. remembering the price both had paid for it, more gratefully accepted the costly friendship offered him, and soon acknowledged both its beauty and its worth. "One question more, Sylvia. How long?" It was very hard to answer, but folding the sharp fact in the gentlest fancy that appeared to her she gave him the whole truth. "I shall not see the spring again, but it will be a pleasant time to lay me underneath the flowers." Sylvia had not known how to live, but now she proved that she did know how to die. So beautifully were the two made one, the winning girl, the deep-hearted woman, that she seemed the same beloved Sylvia, yet Sylvia strengthened, purified, and perfected by the hard past, the solemn present. Those about her felt and owned the unconscious power, which we call the influence of character, and which is the noblest that gives sovereignty to man or woman. So cheerfully did she speak of it, so tranquilly did she prepare to meet it, that death soon ceased to be an image of grief or fear to those about her, and became a benignant friend, who, when the mortal wearies, blesses it with a brief sleep, that it may wake immortal. She would have said, no sad sick chamber, no mournful faces, no cessation of the wholesome household cares and joys, that do so much to make hearts strong and spirits happy. While strength remained, she went her round of daily duties, doing each so lovingly, that the most trivial became a delight, and taking unsuspected thought for the comfort or the pleasure of those soon to be left behind, so tenderly that she could not seem lost to them, even when she was gone. Faith came to her, and as her hands became too weak for anything but patient folding, every care slipped so quietly into Faith's that few perceived how fast she was laying down the things of this world, and making ready to take up those of the world to come. Her father was her faithful shadow, bent and white-haired now, but growing young at heart in spite of sorrow, for his daughter had in truth become the blessing of his life. Mark and Jessie brought their offering of love in little Sylvia's shape, and the innocent counsellor did her sweet work by making sunshine in a shady place. But Moor was all in all to Sylvia, and their friendship proved an abiding strength, for sorrow made it very tender, sincerity ennobled it, and the coming change sanctified it to them both. April came, and on her birthday, with grateful heart, Moor gathered the first snowdrops of the year. All day they stood beside her couch, as fragile and as pale as she, and many eyes had filled as loving fancies likened her to the slender, transparent vase, the very spirit of a shape, and the white flowers that had blossomed beautifully through the snow. When the evening lamp was lighted, she took the little posy in her hand, and lay with her eyes upon it, listening to the book Moor read, for this hour always soothed the unrest of the day. Very quiet was the pleasant room, with no sounds in it but the soft flicker of the fire, the rustle of Faith's needle, and the subdued music of the voice that patiently went reading on, long after Sylvia's eyes had closed, lest she should miss its murmur. For an hour she seemed to sleep, so motionless, so colorless, that her father, always sitting at her side, bent down at last to listen at her lips. The lips smiled, the eyes unclosed, and she looked up at him with an expression as tender as tranquil. "A long sleep and pleasant dreams that wake you smiling?" he asked. "Beautiful and happy thoughts, father. Let me tell you some of them. As I lay here, I fell to thinking of my life, and at first it seemed the sorrowfulest failure I had ever known. Whom had I made happy? What had I done worth the doing? Where was the humble satisfaction that should come hand in hand with death? At first I could find no answers to my questions, and thought my 21 years do not seem long to live. I felt as if it would have been better for us all if I had died, a new-born baby in my mother's arms." "My child, say anything but that, because it is I who have made your life a failure." "Wait a little, father, and you will see that it is a beautiful success. I have given happiness, have done something worth the doing. Now I see a compensation for all seeming loss, and heartily thank God that I did not die till I had learned the true purpose of all lives. He knows that I say these things humbly, that I claim no virtue for myself, and have been a blind instrument in his hand to illustrate truths that will endure when I am forgotten. I have helped Mark and Jessie, for, remembering me, they will feel how blessed they are in truly loving one another. They will keep little Sylvia from making mistakes like mine, and the household joys and sorrows we have known together will teach Mark to make his talent a delight to many, by letting art interpret nature." Her brother standing behind her stooped and kissed her, saying through his tears, "I shall remember, dear." "I have helped Geoffrey, I believe. He lived too much in the affections, till through me he learned that none may live for love alone. Genius will be born of grief, and he will put his sorrow into song, to touch and teach other hearts more gently than his own has been, so growing a nobler and richer man for the great cross of his life." Calm, with the calmness of a grief too deep for tears, and strong in the devout belief, Moor gave his testimony as she paused. "I shall endeavor, and now I am grateful for the pain as for the joy, because together they will show me how to live, and when I have learned that I shall be ready to come to you. I think I have served Adam. He needed gentleness as Geoffrey needed strength, and I, unworthy as I am, woke that deep heart of his and made it a fitter mate for his great soul. To us it seems as if he had left his work unfinished, but God knows best, and when he was needed for a better work he went to find it. Yet I am sure that he was worthier of eternal life for having known the discipline of love." There was no voice to answer now, but Sylvia felt that she would receive it very soon, and was content. "Have you no lesson for your father? The old man needs it most." She laid her thin hand tenderly on his, that if her words should bring reproach, she might seem to share it with him. "Yes, father, this, that if the chief desire of the heart is for the right, it is possible for any human being, through all trials, temptations, and mistakes, to bring good out of evil, hope from despair, success from defeat, and come at last to know an hour as beautiful and blessed as this." Who could doubt that she had learned the lesson? When from the ruins of the perishable body the imperishable soul rose steadfast and serene, proving that after the long bewilderment of life and love it had attained the eternal peace. The room grew very still, and while those about her pondered her words with natural tears, Sylvia lay looking up at a lovely picture that seemed leaning down to offer her again the happiest memory of her youth. It was a painting of the moonlight voyage down the river. Mark had given it that day, and now when the longer, sadder voyage was nearly over, she regarded it with tender pleasure. The moon shone full on Warwick, looking out straight and strong before him, with the vigilant expression native to his face, a fit helmsman to guide the boat along that rapid stream. Mark seemed pausing to watch the oars silvered by the light, and their reflections wavy with the current. Moor, seen in shadow, leaned upon his hand, as if watching Sylvia, a quiet figure, full of grace and color, couched under the green arch. On either hand the summer woods made vernal gloom. Behind the cliffs rose sharply up against the blue, and all before wound a shining road, along which the boat seemed floating like a bird on slender wings between two skies. So long she lay forgetful of herself and all about her that Moor saw she needed rest, for the breath fluttered on her lips, the flowers had fallen one by one, and her face wore the weary yet happy look of some patient child waiting for its lullaby. "Dear, you have talked enough. Let me take you up now, lest the pleasant day be spoiled by a sleepless night." "I am ready, yet I love to stay among you all, for in my sleep I seem to drift so far away I never quite come back. Good night, good night. I shall see you in the morning." With a smile, a kiss for all, they saw her fold her arms about her husband's neck and lay down her head as if she never cared to lift it up again. The little journey was both a pleasure and a pain to them, for each night the way seemed longer to Sylvia, and though the burden lightened the bearer grew more heavy-hearted. It was a silent passage now, for neither spoke, except when one asked tenderly, "Are you easy, love?" and the other answered, with a breath that chilled his cheek, "Quite happy, quite content." So, cradled on the heart that loved her best, Sylvia was gently carried to the end of her short pilgrimage, and when her husband laid her down, the morning had already dawned. End of chapter 21. Recording by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. End of Moods by Louisa May Alcott.